Today we're going to talk about ballast and how to lay it into your tracks and all the tips and tricks you're going to need to make a good job of it. First we've got to get hold of some ballast, and there's lots of different stuff you can use for ballast, and I've found that a visit to the local landscape yard who have a variety of different grades of sand is always a good place to go. So let's go and have a look. So you come to your local landscape supplies and you'll find that they've got shite loads of different sorts of sand. It's river sand, Floyd sand that's very fine, the river sand's quite coarse, building sand is somewhere in between, and you've got grey bricky sand and another washed sand as well. They come in all different colours and consistencies. So all you need to do is arm yourself with a couple of buckets, come and talk to them nice, and you'll get a heap for a couple of bucks. If you can get hold of some old buckets like this that used to have paint or plaster jointing compound or basically anything like that in it, clean them out, give them a good wash out, and take them down with you, and you can put enough raw material in here to last you for a lifetime. Right, now that we're back, we've got our sand of various sorts. Now we're going to make some ballast out of it. Now, usually the stuff you get from the landscapes it's screened, but it does have quite a few bigger rocks, what you'd call rocks, in it that you don't really need for ballast. So what you've got to do is head down to your local kitchen shop, get a flour sieve. You're going to need that, and it does a fantastic job of getting rid of the good stuff, the big stuff out of the little stuff. So you need a little old container, same sort of thing as the other one, only smaller. Your flour sieve, put that on top. Here's our bucket of raw material that we got before. It's a fine sand, but it has lots of little rocks and things in it. So you just need to get a scoop of that. You can use a tablespoon or anything you like, and you put a heap into your sieve, and you give it a shake around, and what's left sitting in the sieve are the rock size stuff. Now don't throw those away, because you can use them for natural rocks on your layout. Okay, so we'll assume you've sieved a great heap of sand, got all the rocks out, and you're ready to start ballasting. Now here's some stuff I prepared earlier. This is a slightly different stuff than what we had before, or what I showed you before, and this is actually beach sand off our local beach down yonder, and I've let that dry out and sieved that, and that's a good consistency for HO scale ballast. Right, so we take our little ballast and start spreading it like so. Make sure none of it's up against the rails, because once you glue it in there and it sticks inside there, you could have derailing problems. It starts hitting wheel flanges, etc. You can run your fingernail along the inside of the rail like that. Usually sorts it out. A bit more of a smooth out. Push all the excess to the ends. It's best to do it in little sections. You won't get sort of too far ahead of yourself that way. Don't worry about out on the sides a great deal, because you can touch those up afterwards, because you're going to end up adding scatter material of some sort on the ground on each side of the track anyway. So there's our ballast in there ready to be glued in. If you've got a nice little paintbrush, you can use that as well to spread your ballast. It is a bit easier than fingers, I just couldn't find it before. What I was saying, just do a little bit at a time, is because if you happen to put excess in like this, it's easier to get it up to the end rather than doing a great long stretch of it. With ballast, it as a rule doesn't cover the sleepers. So you only right, so there's our ballast ready for gluing in. Now what I use to glue is in the ballast in is some PVA glue. This is available at your hardware shops, made by numerous manufacturers. It's that white stuff you glue wood together with. What you're going to need is a little container of it, and you're only going to need about 1/4 to 1/5 of it, because we're going to water it down so that it will spread out through the ballast a lot easier and not go all gluggy. So we've got about 1/4 of it in there. It's handy to have another one of these to put the excess in to start with, and then fill it up with water. Put both caps back on and shake shit out of it. So what we're going to do is drop it in there, in between the sleepers, onto the ballast, and it dissipates out into the ballast. You've usually only got to put it on the sleeper side, I mean on the inside of the track, because it will spread. Once it wets the ballast, it will spread right out into the outside part. You might want to put a few drops on the outside of the track just to make sure that it's got all the way through. You'll see it when you drop it onto the ballast, it'll dissipate very quickly. That'll tell you that it's already wet. Just a few like that. That's it, all you've got to do now is wait for it to dry. Don't worry about if you've missed any bits, because you can always pick them up later once you start putting the scatter material around the track for your dirt and whatever else it is. And you can always make patches, of course. You can patch up a little hole if it didn't happen to get any glue. Just keep a good stock of the same sand that you used for that ballast. On the subject of ballasting points and turnouts, you just got to be a bit careful that you don't end up filling up somewhere vital with glue like in there. So I've always made it a rule to glue the stuff in out here where it's not too bad, and of course make sure any loose stuff you get out between those check rails, get rid of that, otherwise that can be a problem afterwards. But as for putting ballast in around the actual mechanisms, I've just glued up to about here and just put it in loose around there. You've got to be very, very careful with your glue if you're going to glue it in. You don't want to glue that up with aqua there. You might end up finding you'll have to rip the point out. You don't want to avoid that. So that's just one thing to keep in mind around points. That same rule of thumb applies to any sort of points and switches, whether it be normal ones like this or double clips. Yeah, coupled with laying track and ballast, sometimes when you're using some track that you've used before, you'll end up with a gap like this because some of the sleepers have gone missing through misadventure or one cause or another. So I keep all my little offcuts here so that before I ballast I can cut the rails and shut stuff off to slide an appropriate amount of sleepers back in that little gap and make everything look like it's supposed to look. It's amazing what you can find in your travels to use as ballast or even loads for your hoppers. Now we'll just run through a few that I've gathered together over the years. There's that beach sand that we used on the little job we just did. That's the real fine sand that I was sieving to start with, and that's the raw material of it. It's got lumps and chunks in it. A nice one for coarse is river sand, and that's the raw river sand. That's got little rocks in it, of course, that you can use as well. And keep your eye out for all sorts of bits and pieces in your travels, because you never know what you're going to pick up. This is a good example. That's actually ruby dust. Now that was a little bag that was lying around at a sandblasting place that I visited many years ago that they didn't want, so I procured that. And sand comes in all sorts of colours. This one here is a nice grey sand. That's just part of the collection that I've put together for over the years, and they're ideal for, as you'd think, many different jobs. Save little containers like this too that your vitamins come in. They're excellent for keeping your little stocks of ballast and hopper materials in. Right, so what you'll need for ballasting is you'll need a little container, put your ballast in, a visit to the landscape shop to get some sand raw material, your sieve to get rid of the rocks out of it. Don't forget to keep those rocks, you can use them later with your mountainous landscaping, a paintbrush and some PVA glue, watered down 4 or 5 to 1 so that it will dissipate through the ballast a lot easier. And apart from that, a few dollars in your pocket, and as this hobby demands, a bit of your time.